Welcome, everybody. This is the Soul Path Community class for Friday, April 11th, 2025. And we're talking about two major events that are happening tomorrow. Venus moving direct after a virtual 40-day retrograde, and at the same time, a full moon in Libra at virtually the same degree. So relationship is full on in our face, something that we've maybe been reviewing during the Venus retrograde. Maybe also, let's see if I can get this. There it is. What we've been reviewing during the Venus retrograde, maybe what we've been reviewing with the Mercury retrograde, and then the full moon is in the sign of Libra. And that connects us to the previous lunar nodes that we've been in for the last couple of years that were in Aries and Libra. So even though this is not an eclipse, things have moved farther away, it is, connected to what we've been dealing with, which has been all about self, Aries, versus other, Libra. How much can we be filled with life force vitality, a sense of self in a positive, healthy, spiritual way? And how can we help our relationships be healthy in a way of peace and balance and harmony and not giving ourselves up too much? We've all been very attuned during that time period. That was all of last year, 2024, and half of 2023. Was the Aries Libra eclipses. Now we've moved into Pisces Virgo eclipses, and there's still, it's a different flavor, but there's still the let go energy of giving too much to others. Libra gives too much to others because Libra seeks this harmony and balance and thinks of the other. Whereas Virgo, South Node, on that nodal level, there is a deep, penetrating feeling that one must serve, one must be humble. There is an automatic unequal power balance. So Libra has equality, wants equality and trust. And Virgo, when it is, in its more shadow phase, gives too much out of a feeling of, I must solve the problems, I must be perfect, I must give to others, and I don't have the same amount of power. And the solution, so to speak, is Pisces, and saying, I'm going to surrender and trust and be connected to who I am as a soul. A little bit different than Aries, where Aries, as a solution to toxic Libra, is I am me. I get to have life force and vitality and move things forward, gut level, instinct, feel. But either way, we are working with relationships. And this particular change point, which we're coming into in the next day, is very significant. And I'm going to assume that most of you have been in some way reviewing key relationships in your life. And the secondary aspect of Venus is about resources, money, resources, our self-worth. So that also will be part of what we're working on. Here we have the chart for the full moon in Libra. It will be April 12th, Saturday, 5:23 p.m. Pacific, 8:23 p.m. Eastern. And so this full moon, you can see it right here, 23 degrees, 20 minutes. So we'll keep that at 23, 24 generally. You see how it is conjunct Chiron. Now, Chiron is the cometary body, comet-like body. Sometimes people refer to it as an asteroid, but the astronomers are still trying to figure out exactly what it is. And it represents a wound, a fundamental karmic wound, where whatever sign it's in, we feel like we're just not as good as others. We feel that we can't quite do it. We don't have what it takes. We're wounded in that function. So to feel like we're wounded in Aries function says that we believe we can't be brave and courageous. We can't start things. We can't do what we want to do. We don't have the energy. We don't have the fighting power. We just don't have what it takes to launch. And yet, with Chiron always, when we review our life, we see the seeds. We see the way we have, in fact, shown our courage and bravery, and we've done amazing things. So there's a way that this full moon is asking us to go even deeper than normal around our Aries energy and trust in our beingness, trust in our instinctual power. There's a great deal of intuitive energy in the sign of Aries that just connects to the light of birth and growth, initiation and starts, and just goes for it. Doesn't really think too much about the long term. Now, Libra can think more about the long term and what it's going to take to harmonize and balance. But we attune ourselves a little bit with a full moon to what we're letting go of around the moon patterns. And that will be this tendency to try to harmonize and balance so much that we give ourselves up to others and we dither, we vacillate, we don't actually get things done. So just going for it is a big part of the message of this full moon. And somebody talking? Another part of the full moon is that it represents a period of completion, of finishing, of standing on the plateau and assessing. So we may be complete certain projects and it's time to let go and move on. Maybe complete certain relationships. And it may be that we stop and assess what we're at, and then we think about maybe an adjustment. In a couple of weeks, when we have a new moon in Taurus, we have the potential for a much better level of new start than we've had so far this whole year, because we won't have any retrogrades. And it's a nice new moon in the grounded earthy sign of Taurus. But we still have this, this energy of Pisces to Aries, the vision, the imagination, the spiritual energy, and then the Aries, the launch, the initiation. Now you can see this, at the point of this full moon, that Venus is still retrograde at 24 degrees and 37 minutes, very close to Saturn. With Venus and Saturn, I've been really seeing people setting boundaries with people they're in relationship with. And I'm seeing people connecting into their addictions and dependencies, the ways that they give themselves up and are not as clear-minded as they wish to be. So, Saturn since 2023 has been bringing us the message to be disciplined and grounded around our spiritual path and all things Pisces, our transcendent creativity, our compassion, our spirituality. So this point in time where they are so closely connected, Venus and Saturn, takes us from just stabilizing and structuring Pisces energy in general and takes it to this realm of relationship and resources. And you can see it's connected to the North Node, in the sky, soul's purpose to be connected to all things Pisces. And then the Mercury as well, which has just recently gone direct, also in Pisces. We're covering the territory. We're in the shadow period of the Mercury retrograde. So the things we've been thinking about about our life, communication, and wherever the signs Aries and Pisces are in your chart, the house, the material of the houses represent the psyche and how that translates into physical real world. So if Aries and Pisces is in your 12th house, as it is in mine, then it's all about your spiritual path and your spiritual vocation, a need maybe for rest and retreat, getting ready for more of a launch. If this is happening in your 10th house, it's really about career or how you show up in the world, how people see you. Um, Seventh house partnership, fourth house, literally home and family. So that's what we'll be looking at toward the end of this class. We'll take a look at a couple of charts and look at what kind of processing has been going on in your minds and also what actions you might be thinking of exploring. The other thing that I'll say about this full moon is that it is in a T-square to Mars. So a T-square puts a certain tension on planets. Oppositions like a full moon, you're trying to find that internal balance, and there may be some level of projection that something is going on with another person. Like in a full moon, if you align, if say you have the full moon in your chart, you might align with Libra and feeling like you're a very nice, gracious person and you're, a great relational, giving person to the people that you care about. But you've got these selfish Aries people in your life who are just doing what they want to do and they're not seeing you. Or you might feel like you're the sun in Aries and you are the person who's ready to go and very excited about new things that you're developing. And you've got some person in your life, Moon in Libra, who you care about, but they just can't make up their mind. Are they coming or not? Do they agree or not? And they're going around in circles looking for perfection, and you're like, the horse at the gate ready to go. Now we add Mars to this kind of vibration, and we have the Aries planet, Mars, that wants to go forward and make things happen, but it's in the sign of Cancer, which is a little bit uncomfortable for it. It is not an easy sign for it to operate in because now Mars has to take into account feeling, emotion, family, the people that are cared about in order to move things forward. So there has to be a certain adjustment between the Mars and the Sun, which isn't so bad. It kind of brings a little bit of emotional framework into the new start energy. But then Mars has to connect with the Moon in Libra, and this too can be a little difficult. We've got something that wants to move fast, Mars, Libra, Moon wants to go a little slower, be more careful that there's kind of a balanced perfection. But there is both thinking about relationship to some degree. Libra is any kind of relationship. Mars is much more about nurturing, unconditional love kinds of feelings. So there may be events that occur because we tend to get unforeseen events happening related to squares around this full moon. There may be, if this is strong in your chart, there may be some kind of event that occurs that requires you to come up with a new solution that you haven't thought of before in order to resolve the tension between the sun and the moon, between between the sun and the moon, but between Mars and the moon and Mars and the sun, precisely in terms of those being the squares. But yeah, there is also kind of an oppositional energy that has to be addressed with any oppositions, where we've got the sun taking us in one direction around power and choice, the moon taking us in another direction around feeling and history and what our habit patterns are. And are we going to let go of habit patterns or find a higher expression for them? Okay, now moving right along, we come to Venus direct, which happens just after that full moon. It's at 6:02 p.m. Pacific, 9:02 p.m. Eastern, and it is, you can see 24 degrees and 37 minutes, and it is exactly where the full moon was exact. But you can see at that point, see the sun is at 23 degrees and 21 minutes, and the moon is 23:40. That is still deeply full moon time. And everything we've just talked about is still in place. But now we can see that Venus, which has been in this retrograde now for 40 days, it was around 8-9 degrees of Aries when it went retrograde. The Mercury retrograde was around 9-10, as I recall, and it went back also almost to the same position. So we've got this review process that's been very deep now for well over a month. And it's taking us through the early degrees of Aries, the later degrees of Pisces, the North Node in Pisces, and asking to look at relationship. Now, in terms of relationship astrology, these 10 tenets that I have here come from my Relationship Astrology, a Conscious Approach class that's just been scheduled for the fall this year, 2025. It's a 10-week class, and I'm using this to ground our conversation, to talk to you about what you might look at around relationship astrology to understand yourself and others, whether you're doing some readings for people, because I know some of you are senior students or astrologers, or whether you're thinking about this just for yourself and looking at your own chart and chart of other people that you're in relationship with. Doesn't have to be romantic, it can be friends, family, bosses, coworkers, any kind of relationship. We basically look at the same things. So the first thing to me is the conscious approach, the overview, to try to get away from thinking of relationship in specific kinds of linear terms. People will come in to me for a session and they'll say, tell me who I'm going to marry or when I'm going to get married. And please don't tell me it's going to be a Scorpio, because I dated a Scorpio once and I never want to date another one. Or an Aries or a Virgo. There's a few signs that get a pretty bad rap. But there is kind of this sense of, what's the best sun sign for me? And that is something that has been promoted in regular magazines and media when people have really been all about sun signs. They don't know about the whole chart at all, which is one of the reasons a lot of people don't even believe in astrology. So when you get past any singular thing, one of the things that I'm going to say is that all of our relationships are part of our spiritual path. And we come together to learn and grow. And we need to remember that as a framework, that if we have some perfect chart connection, let's say everything is lined up in conjunctions and trines and sextiles, we're just so harmonious. We're like astro twins. We're not likely to feel compelled to be in that relationship. It doesn't offer growth. And what I see creates the best relationships. That's coming back to the first aspect of relationship astrology, where we're looking at relationship as a spiritual path, and we get it out of our heads, this Hollywood idea that relationship is supposed to be perfect and easy, and if we're really with our soulmate, there's going to be no issues, it's going to be so wonderful. And we start to see that the ideal chart has some levels of connection, some level of the conjunctions, which are really nice on the personal planets, where we have the same sign, but different personal perspectives, different personal goals, like moon and sun together, or Venus and moon together, things like that. But we have some challenges. We want to see a couple of squares, a couple of quincunxes, things that show that there's something that we're working on with the relationship. And then the lunar nodes tell us so much. And if I only had one thing I could talk to a couple about, I only had like 10 minutes to talk about their relationship, I would talk about the lunar nodes and how they can understand their partner's soul level needs and support that, and how maybe they're attuned naturally by the planets that they have in the same sign as the partner's lunar nodes. But if you don't have any planets connected to your partner's nodes, then you have to be a little bit more co-creative, a little bit more conscious about the support level. And a really good example of this will be if your partner has South Node in Libra, where they're coming in with a relationship orientation. And probably when you first started dating them, you're thinking, oh, this person is great. They think of my needs all the time. They're not selfish like my other, relationships. But their North Node is in Aries. That's a person that needs to be encouraged not to be relationship oriented, a person that needs to be encouraged to be independent and free and do more what they want. And that can be a little threatening to a relationship. And that can, indicate that, or how would I say this? That can be challenging to keep encouraging your partner to do more things on their own and be less relational. And, if you yourself are a relational oriented person, this can feel like a threat. Also in the first class, we cover some of the basics of houses and signs. So there are some houses that are particularly relationship oriented. The fourth house relating to family, the fifth house dating, seventh house partnership that's equal, where trust and commitment are key elements. And the eighth house, intimate bonding, financial shared affairs. This is where we really double down and we're really talking about, trust being built. Yet every single house has some kind of relationship that we can read from it. The sixth house will be people who work for us. The 10th house will be our bosses. The first house will be our relationship with ourselves. So every single house has a certain aspect of relationship, and understanding what's going on there will be helpful. I just want to make a comment about these cats because I was just looking at them. Don't you think like the white cat is like a Capricorn going, will you get away from me? And the little red cat is much more of like a Cancer or Libra going, I love you, let me lick your head. I noticed that when I saw these pictures. Anyway, the signs, okay, here's, talking about signs in a more general way. The, there's some signs like Cancer and Libra are just naturally more relational, and other signs need more freedom, like Sagittarius and Aries. Now, yes, we can use that as kind of a shorthand looking at the sun sign, but you can have a person who has the sun in Capricorn, but then has a stellium of planets in Cancer, or Pisces, and is actually much more attuned to emotional connection than you might think in your head from the basics of sun sign astrology. So that's our base. We start with this idea that we can have a good relationship with anybody if we work at it from this place of transformation and spirituality. And then looking at core relationship planets, we have Moon, Mars, and Venus. So Moon represents our emotional needs for unconditional love, nurturing, and caretaking, what gives us security. And Venus represents the relational energy that's more about what we want to attract and what feels validating to us, how we stabilize relationships, and can include any ways that we're relating with other people and also with the resources of the world. Mars goes forward and gets what we want. So you can think of Venus as drawing to you, being magnetic, attractive to what you want, and Mars going for it. They both relate in a certain way to desire energy, but Venus tells us what we desire, and Mars goes to get what we desire and is strong and instinctual. And there's a lot of old astrology, it's very gender-based. I try my very best to get out of that. I don't refer to planets as he or she in pronouns. I just refer to them as much as possible around the kinds of energies that they have, because obviously, you know, people in male bodies have Venus, people in female bodies have Mars. We all have all of these energies. But understanding what your personal needs are from those three planets can be a very key part of your relationship understanding. And then I've done a lot of work around Venus and the Moon with the outer planets, especially Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, but also have added Saturn to that research over the years. And this is where you see the deeper challenges that people have around relationship that usually leads to difficult relationships in the early part of life, because you've got these transpersonal forces affecting your love planets, your relationship planets. So what it says, if you have these aspects, that relationship is a super part of your spiritual path. I would go so far to say relationship is part of everybody's spiritual path. But if you have Pluto, Uranus, Neptune in aspect, especially hard aspects like squares and quincunxes, if you have that in your chart, you already know you've probably had some very painful, difficult relationships. You've experienced the betrayals, the lies, the unavailability, the meanness, the wounding, and you have to work hard on transforming yourself so that you then draw to you people who have also transformed themselves, and you can have a truly deep conscious relationship. Now, fixed stars, asteroids, and Chiron are more secondary, but what they do is they like put the sprinkles on the cake. You already have the cake and its frosting, but these add little bits of details. A lot of times the asteroids are particularly related to relationship issues. Chiron tells us where we're wounded, and that may well have to do with relationship. And the fixed stars, if you get into fixed stars, and that's a whole field of study, the fixed stars have a lot of names on them that you'll find relate to your personal relationships. So you might find there's an asteroid named Mary that is connected to your moon, and your mother's name was Mary, things like that. So that can add a level of fine detail. I don't always use them myself in a regular reading, but as you get to know a chart more, your own chart, family, friends, or clients you see a lot, sometimes adding these in brings in a whole new level of understanding. Then you want to go into the synastry, which is two charts connecting with each other. So you put one chart around the other, and that tells you this energetic quality of connection. The person in the center is looking out at the person who's wrapped around them, and this is how they see them. A really good example of that is going to be if person A has person B's sun in their third house, and the third house is the house of communication, but it's also the house of siblings. Person A may love talking to person B, but not necessarily see them as romantic potential, because they feel like, oh, they're just like my sister, they're just like my brother. So we have this attunement that we can see energetically from wrapping the charts around each other, and we do it in both directions. And then I think most of you who are listening understand that, but it's a very good way to understand how two people are naturally predisposed to connect to each other. And then we have the relationship chart, or the chart of the relationship. These are based on midpoints between each planet and the midheaven, and the regular composite just calculates the actual middle average between the two. Classic example, if one person's sun is Pisces, the other one is Taurus, the midpoint is Aries in the middle. Davison does that same thing, but it also calculates a place and a time so that you actually get a birth date and a geographical location. And that allows a lot more in terms of progressions and transits to be brought in, and can have a lot to do with the events in a person's relationship. Here again, I don't use Davison all the time, only in relationships that I'm really digging deep on. Progressions, growth and development that we have over time. We want to look at each person and how they're progressing. And I will tell you, there's often major changes in people's lives when one person's progress chart starts to line up and conjoin with the other person's natal chart, or the two progress charts line up together. That is less often, but I really see it a lot where one person's progressed comes to another person's natal chart, and major changes, major deepening and commitment will happen at that time. I can't do it with the AstroGold software, but when I had the IO software, I was able to create progressed charts for composites by taking the progress chart of one, the progress chart of the other, and bringing them together. And I haven't had the opportunity to really try to work that through with AstroGold yet. As I'm thinking about it, as I'm talking about it, I'm thinking, I think I found I couldn't do it. But and then I'm thinking, well, if I save the progress chart, I should be able to do it. So anyway, when I get off this class, I'm going to double check that, and I'll write something in the notes about whether it's possible with AstroGold. Then we have all the other kinds of turning points that you're going to see in a person's personal chart. Transits, solar arcs, eclipses, these create significant changes, especially when they are two relationship planets or relationship houses. And the bottom line of all of this is that being compassionate, being caring, understanding how difficult relationships are, how people get engaged in relationship and can't see their way out, is so important for the way that we speak to people about their relationships, whether we're bringing in the astrology or not. We have to realize that there's no accounting for other people's karma and what they feel drawn to do or drawn to be in. And when we're friends with people who are in challenging relationships, we really do need to learn to bite our tongue a lot and allow them to make their own choice. It doesn't usually help people to tell them that they need to break up. And it's so common for people to say, oh, there's more fish in the sea and you could find somebody else who's better. That may be true when you're 20. There's a lot of fish in the sea at 20, but every decade there seems to be less fish swimming around. And many times we're deep into karmic relationship material that we really have to work through. And nobody can tell us for sure, when a karmic contract is over. And that is truly what will connect us to our choices, is our internal personal sense of our karma. And by going through all of these aspects that I'm talking about on this list, I think it's a pretty extensive list. I don't know if any of you can think of something else that you look at in terms of relationship astrology, But this is pretty much what I'm looking at with myself and everybody that I'm working with. And so let's go look at some charts and see what's going on in your lives. And here you'll see that I've put the AstroArt conference in Istanbul back on. I'm not going to Turkey, but they've asked me to do my talks by Zoom, so I will be doing that. And I look forward, hopefully, to seeing some of you at the Edmonton Astrologers lecture that I'm going to be doing tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific. And I posted the link in the community today there because they've been so unresponsive about people registering for it. They've given me the link to share with you all. And so let's talk.